Hey everybody, Ben here for the Bonehead podcast, and welcome to Blood Bowl Tournament Rosters Underworld. Okay, so Underworld had a cool upgrade into 2020. Then in the last FAQ from Games Workshop, the FAQ, they changed a few things, which are really kind of impacts how this team runs in competitive format, so constructed, so tournament Blood Bowl. So what we do is we look at tournament rosters for every team available. We put together some rosters at 1100 and at 1200 because most tournaments are kind of between that point, so you can flex up or flex down. Now with the Underworld changes to the way that swarming works and the fact that Hakflem tends to be the most important star player for the team, both of those things changed. Swarming changed and Hakflem's price went up. So what we're doing is we've got a March update for you now. We've had a few months since the FAQ to adjust, and I'm going to give to you what I think are basically a few of the best tournament rosters for Underworld. Okay, so the first roster we're going to look at is without any star players at all. Now, this is another thing that we're seeing in a lot of tournaments now, is not that people are fed up of star players, but that star players in this edition are really potent. They're really fun, and it is a great way to create a whole bunch of different rosters. So you can play against an Underworld team. Now, most of them historically have been Hakflem teams, but there's lots of different builds. However, there's a lot of tournaments that are saying no star players at all, let's just run teams vanilla, and they normally have an inflated starting team value, probably around about 1100. So in the last video that we did for Underworld, we had a couple of vanilla builds, and we'll have a look at them now, but obviously they've changed with how swarming works. So the first one we've got for you is the 1100 Rat Ogre. Now, team value wise, this one comes in bang on 1100. You've got one Rat Ogre and you've got the full complement of Skaven. You've got the Blitzer, the Thrower, the Gutter Runner, the 3 rats. Now I don't think this roster is needed to change at all because you've got 5 Goblins and 4 Snotlings. And what that does is that gives you a pretty respectable team of what, 16? I think this is absolutely maxed out. If you can't take star players, Underworld are kind of limited when it comes to higher team value because they don't have extra positionals to buy. You can have a Rat Ogre or a Troll. You can have all 6 of these Skaven, and then all you can do is grab rerolls, maybe bribes, maybe apothecaries, and that's kind of where your limit is. Now, one thing that we've got to be very, very aware of here is that Snotlings and the swarming rules have changed. So swarming now works, you can only bring on a number of swarming players up to, now you roll a d3, but you can bring on up to the amount of swarming players you've already got on the pitch. So if you have no Snotlings on the pitch, you can bring on no Snotlings. If you have 1 Snotling on the pitch, you roll a d3, it doesn't matter what you roll, you can bring on up to 1 Snotling. So with this team's roster, you want to have more Snotlings than before. Now, because the way this roster works, this is probably the best way to do it. The only thing you can do here is drop a Goblin and take an extra Snotling. It's not really going to add a huge amount. Kind of how this team wants to play is 1 big guy, 6 Skaven. Okay, that takes you to 7 players. 3 Goblins, 1 Snotling, and then you can swarming on another Snotling, basically. So you've got some Goblins in reserve here, and there's a couple of things you can do to tweak this roster to your taste. What you can do is you can drop a Goblin and take an Apothecary. You can drop a reroll and, again, take an Apothecary. I wouldn't normally recommend having 4 rerolls, but with this roster, you've maxed out everything else. You can take that 4th reroll and change it into an Apothecary, change it into a bribe, whatever you want to do. But that's kind of how I see the roster playing out. Skills-wise, this team is now tier 1, so you're likely to have access to less skills for your tournament. Now, the Rat Ogre is an awesome piece. Now, I love the Rat Ogre, and I love the Rat Ogre in the Underworld roster because you can bring on 1 or 2 Snotlings, depending on how heavy you're going on the Snotling build, and it can just feed people to your Rat Ogre. Now, this build here, where you've got so many Goblins as well, you can also feed Goblins to your Rat Ogre, so it's not too bad. Now, combat skills, amazing on the Rat Ogre. The Rat Ogre is likely to be blitzing or brawlering around, so having block is going to be perfect if you can get it. Brawler or Juggernaut would be great too. Break Tackle is a great skill on the Rat Ogre. It gets +1 to dodge away, which means it's 3+ dodging into the open, which is not bad for a big guy. Now, the Blitzer and the Thrower, you just want to take combat skills. The Blitzer is the only piece on this team that gets primary access to his strength other than the Rat Ogre, so it taking Guard or Mighty Blow gives you that assist piece or the extra removal piece. Now the Rat Ogre is going to do a great job of removing stuff, But having that mobile blitzer, movement 7, is pretty awesome. And having an extra bit of mighty blow is going to be pretty good as well. Now, the thrower is already brilliant. Now, taking extra arms means that you are picking up on a 2+ and quick passing on a 2+. But really, there's no bad skill for this thrower. You could even just put block on him and it is good to go. The gutter runner, again, this skill set is so great. This is why the team has performed so outrageously brilliantly, because not only does it have access to hack phlegm, but essentially you can start building your own hack phlegm. You can give him block. That is a movement 9 strength 2 blodger. You can give him 2 heads, which means he's dodging around on a 1+. You can give him wrestle to be the ultimate ball hawk. You can give him horns to be the ultimate ball hawk, blitzing on a, you know, with an extra strength. The gutter runner, it depends. If you want to go heavy, like score heavy, 2 heads being able to dodge around on a 1+ is pretty awesome. Extra arms means he's always catching the ball basically on a 1+ in the open or a 2+. The gutter runner is just excellent. Safest thing to do is to take block, but that's not the fun thing when it comes to Underworld. You've got 3 line rats. They become your other pieces. Okay, you can build a second thrower with sure hands. You can put block or wrestle on them to be really good defensive pieces. With this roster, you don't really want your line rats to go on the line because you've got goblins, and in this roster you've got a myriad of victims to put on the line with the rat ogre as well. But block, kick, guard, if you can take it on a double, wrestle and tackle are all superb skills for those line rats. The goblins are great, and this is it. The goblins in this roster are also fantastic. You can put mutations on them for no price. So sneaky git is a great one. Not a mutation, but actually you can wander around, do a cheeky little foul here and there. But 2 heads means the goblins are dodging around on 2++ because they've got the dodge, they get stunty, they've got 3+ agility, and 2 heads gives them +1 to every dodge roll, which is a 2+ with a reroll everywhere they want to go. Horns is awesome on a goblin as well because they've got that 3+ dodge into any amount of tackle zones. Giving them horns means they can take a blitz on a strength 3. Now normally that means you can get a 1-die block on the ball carrier wherever the ball carrier is. Really sneaky way to do it. Absolutely brilliant. If you can stack skills, horns and wrestle is a great one. 1-die block, pow star, wrestle down. That's a 50% chance of it being really successful. And when you're rolling a ton of rerolls as well, that's a 75% chance of you being able to take down the ball carrier if they don't have dodge. That is filthy good. All right, you've got to make a 3++ roll first, but that's an 88% chance. So then you end up with a 75% chance of an 88% chance, which gives you a 2/3 of the time that's just going to straight up work with a reroll and a dodge reroll. That's excellent odds in Blood Bowl. The Snotlings themselves, there's really not a lot of point picking skills on them. They can be great fun if you get an opportunity to put some combat skills or something on a Snotling for free. Do it. Otherwise, you really want to focus on maxing out the proper positionals. So that's the Rat Ogre 1100. Let's look at the Troll build for those of you who are old school Underworld coaches. I think the Rat Ogre is better, but the Troll is cheaper, and it does give you that throw teammate angle. So, Troll, all 6 of your Skaven, 4 goblins, 4 snotlings, 4 rerolls, comes to 1065. So this is the bit where you can have a bit of flexibility. So what does that give you? It gives you 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 players. So you've got one more dude you can take. Now, to maximize swarming, it is less important with the troll build. Okay, you want to have 15k cheap pieces there to support your Rat Ogre in the Rat Ogre build. Don't need that quite so much in the troll build. So what you can do, and this is why I've left this roster essentially unfinished, is you can drop a snotling and take another goblin. Okay, that's a pretty good place to be. You can drop a reroll, take an extra goblin. You don't need the 4 rerolls, but when you're at this point of saturation for the team, you're good to go. And this is where the flexibility really comes in here. The only difference between these 2 rosters is that you want to use the snotlings to support the Rat Ogre's just unnecessary rage to make sure that it always does what it wants to do. When it comes to the troll build, you've got that extra aerial element, so you can throw snotlings at dudes, and that's where their swarming ability comes in really helpful. But it also means you can make a paratrooping jump up goblin, so you can throw him on defense, throw a goblin onto the other side of the pitch. This is where snotlings come in very handy as well, and then you can start haranguing the backfield while you bring some pretty great players into combat. Now, you don't have the Rat Ogre, so your primary point of removal here is going to be your blitzer, so that blitzer really needs to take Mighty Blow or Frenzy or something to kind of really capitalize on it. And then you want to use your skills to make the line rats combat pieces. If you can take the blitzer with Mighty Blow and 3 line rats with wrestle or block, well, that gives you 4 blitzers basically. That gives you 4 Skaven blitzers essentially on this roster. 4 Skaven blitzers, 1 thrower who is obviously one of the best throwers in the game, and the gutter runner who is definitely one of the best scoring threats in the game. Well, that's your primary team contingent, and that's backed up with a troll who you can chuck strong arm on to make your goblin and snotling throwing better, guard to help your front line be better, tentacles to use them as a defensive piece is a really great way to do it. It depends how you want to play it, and this is a really interesting flex roster. So, like I said, you can max out on snotlings to just play that swarming thing and use your troll to just minigun them into the opponent. I think that's a pretty fun way to do it. The troll build, I think, focuses more on goblins and uses the snotlings as a defensive player. They're great. Your opponent plays, oh yeah, we don't have a bloodthirster anymore. The Bloodspawn. Okay, you just put some snotlings on him. He's going to frenzy around and it's going to be awesome. I ran snotlings against a Roger build at Sand Bowl, and just a couple of snotlings just took that rat ogre out the entire game. Just led him astray, led him astray, led him astray. 15-30k against a piece that's 150k with probably a skill is a massive. That's like a 10-to-1 ratio of TVOP, team value on pitch. Absolutely brilliant. That's why you've got snotlings here. So deploying one snotling, bringing an extra on with swarming, that gives you two distraction pieces. That's going to leave you with like three goblins on there as well to be your primary kind of speed, dodgy, stunty stuff. And then you've got a great roster of 6 Skaven players and a troll. But we're here to talk competitive Blood Bowl, and the best way to win in Blood Bowl is to look at taking star players because they just give you a whole bunch of skills for free. So most tournaments will give you a skill package. You can take 4 primary, 1 double. You can spend 100k on upgrades. You've got 36 SPP to spend. Hagflem Scuttle Spike. Is it Scuttle or is it Shuttle? I think it's Scuttle. I think I did correct it. Has got all the skills. Alright, Hagflem is just, I don't know, the best star player in Blood Bowl. Even now, his price has been increased. So this roster here, 1100, you get Hagflem on an Underworld roster. Comes in at 1090. You get Hagflem. The Roger, you get all 6 of your Skaven pieces. It gives you 3 goblins, 4 snotlings, and only 2 rerolls. Now this is the roster that has been most impacted by the FAQ changes. Hagflem went up, swarming got a little bit less good, and your tier went bad. Okay, well, we didn't go bad. It just went from tier 1 to tier 2, which in most formats is going to cost you 1 or 2 skills for your team. So you've got a bit of a squeeze. Now, Hagflem, Underworld is still running really hot. So it's not killed them, but it has just made it a little bit more fair. So in this roster, what we have changed is we've upped our snotlings and downgraded our rerolls. Now what you can do here, and this is the clever thing about most of these builds, is you can flex your thrower to have leader to take your 3rd reroll. And what that does is that gives you Hagflem, 6 Skaven and a Rat Ogre. So that's 8 solid players. Then you take 2 goblins, put them on the pitch, bring on 1 snotling, and then swarm in 1 snotling to be the rage victim for the Rat Ogre each turn. You've got 4 snotlings. That means you can have 1 deploy, 1 bring on. Okay, so you can have at least 2 drives where you can bring on extra snotlings. Now that is assuming that nobody else dies, because if you look at the roster, what have you got? You've got Hagflem, Rat Ogre, 8 players, 9, 10, 11 with the goblins, 15 with snotlings. So you will have to lose several players, and it's going to happen. You're going to lose a couple of snotlings, and that's fine. If you lose a couple of snotlings and a goblin, that takes you down to 12 players. You should still be able to swarm on 1 extra snotling to be your Rat Ogre's victim. With leader getting you that 3rd reroll, you will have everything that you need. Now, the only thing you can kind of do here is flex out a goblin to maximize your snotlings even more, but what will happen there is you will end up deploying 2 snotlings on, and then you can swarm on 1, but the more snotlings you've got on the pitch, the quicker they will die. That 12th man, that 12th snotling that you've got is going to be the victim. Now, you can do that. You can deploy 3 snotlings and try and swarm on 3 if that's what you want to do. But the advantage of having this swarming element, you don't get D3 free snotlings anymore. So you're not going to be deploying 2 free snotlings unless you've already got 2 snotlings on the pitch. You only get 6, which means it's kind of, if you want to go max snotling, you can only do it for the first drive. If you want to do that, you drop the goblin, take a couple of extra snotlings, saves you, I don't know, like 20k that you can not really spend on anything else anyway. You've maxed out your roster at 16 at that point. It's tough. It is tough, and you do get the squeeze. But, and this is something that I cannot stress enough, we're looking at these rosters at 1100. That is the lowest point that most tournaments will go. There will be tournaments that are 1 million to try and get that starter vibe. Okay, not seeing those very often. 1.1 million, 1.5 million, 1.2 million are the most common. 1.1 is probably the lowest. And that's why we're looking at these rosters. Because you add in 50k here, well, what can you do? You can pick up an extra reroll. You can flex your roster around. Drop a goblin, take 2 extra snotlings, take that 3rd reroll, and that means you can take that leader skill and you can put it on something else. Now, how the team plays and the skill set that you've got is exactly the same as the rosters we've just looked at. These players do what they do really well. Hackflem just gives you an extra brilliant Strength 3 Skaven player that's great on offense and is actually very good on defense. Focus on developing your line rats if you can into being additional blitzers. The thrower taking leader allows you to spend the extra cash in maxing out everything else. Now, you can drop a Skaven if you want to. You can drop a Skaven, drop a Snotling, take an extra reroll, but this is probably the best middle ground. You can still sneak on 1 or 2 Snotlings if you want to go all in at the beginning of the game to kind of flex out, to distract your opponent, and to give your Rat Ogre a good bit of victim. And you're doing that at the same time as having your solid core of Skaven, a superstar player, and the Rat Ogre. It's a pretty great place to be. It's not as good as it used to be, but it is still a top tier roster. And even though Morg went up from 340 to 380, at 1100 you can still fit him on. I love this. You can still fit him on as an Underworld star player build. Morg will take the place of your big guy, okay? Whether you were going Troll or Rat Ogre, Morg is now that dude, okay? He's got an excellent ability to throw things, and he's got an excellent ability to Mighty Blow +2 murder things. So this is not a bad place to be. You get Morg, you get all of your Skaven pieces, you get 3 Goblins, 3 Snotlings, and 2 rerolls. So that gives you 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 players plus Morg, which means you can still flex on an extra Snotling if you want to. Now, one thing you can do is drop it down to 2 Goblins and max out your Snotlings to 6. That gives you 8 little stunty dudes, 6 regular dudes, and a Morg. That's at 1100. Like I said, you can add in more things than that, and until you get up to 1200 you can start looking at actually adding in a big guy again, and it gets absolutely ridiculous. But at the lower threshold you can fit Morg on here, and what Morg will do is fulfill the role of the Rat Ogre as removal and the Troll as your kind of catapult for dudes. In fact, I think his ability is called the Catapult. You've got 2 rerolls, so you need to use that leader reroll. So you need to use that thrower skill to get leader to take it as your 3rd reroll. Morg is good to go though. He's got all the skills you want. He's going to be an excellent source of power, and he is going to distract your opponent. That's something that's really important. Now, I've gone with the 3-3 build here because without the Rat Ogre you don't need as many Snotlings, but what you can do here is by dropping that 3rd Goblin, going down to 2 and taking 6 Snotlings, is you can max deploy Snotlings in the first drive. Now what that will do is that will give you the ability to stall your opponent and kind of focus your combat power. If you've got a couple of extra Snotlings on there, that means you've got 4 Snotlings on the pitch, which means that 2+ dodge ability to deploy them exactly where you want them to go, mixed in with the fact that they are dodge and sidestep, means that they are going to distract and kind of hamper your opponent's drive. What that means you can do is then gang up using your Skaven and your Morg to kind of start destroying them. It's a very effective strategy. It's going to be fun. Now, the problem is if you've got so much of a team value in one player here, like we have in Morg, your opponent is going to be able to sacrifice a zombie to stand next to him. Maybe they've got goblins or Snotlings of their own that they can just put on Morg to stop him from doing a ton of other stuff. Well, they can do that, but let's face it, this Skaven build here with a couple of goblins is actually very effective at scoring as well. So be aware, you can run Morg, you're kind of all in at this point, but it's not that bad, and you can still do it at 1100. But there are some cool new star players since the last time we did our tournament roster for Underworld. Have we updated the Undead one since the Undead stuff? I don't know. Have we had any Undead stuff? I don't know if we had. Anyway, Creek Rustgouger, the Verminator, is a strength 7 ball and chain that comes with a free automatic bribe. And at 1100 you can run him with a Rat Ogre. This is absolutely awesome. This is a proper power build and I love it so much. Rat Ogre, your full complement of Skaven. You're not having to give up anything on that side. 4 Goblins, 4 Snotlings, that's 8, 14, 15, 16 players, 2 rerolls. Use leader to take that extra reroll. And then you get to deploy your entire team. 1 Snotling, bring on another one, 12 man. You've got Creek Rustgouger there to be a movement, what was it, movement 5? Movement 5, strength 7 ball and chain, who is just going to start affecting your opponent in a very big way. Now, the great thing about this roster is you've got the extra stunty players that can anchor where Creek is going. the cool thing is they've got sidestep, so if he does block them, you get to kind of lead them on a merry little chase. They're going to be able to protect him from having your opponent stack blocks against the ball and chain. Now that's the vulnerability of the ball and chain, is that they're strength 7. Doesn't seem like much of a vulnerability, but strength 7 is achievable if you throw your entire team at it, or maybe you've just got a cheeky dauntless troll slayer who's going to roll up and just one die block you. As soon as you go down with the ball and chain, you are out. Now, having those extra players is going to mean you're going to be able to stop the massive swarming attack on Creek Rustgouger and keep him on the pitch. And as long as he's on the pitch, the first time you end a drive with him on the pitch, he just stays on. There's none of this shenanigans for secret weapons. The first time he stays on. So you can actually run Creek Rustgouger on defense, which is something you don't normally want to do with a secret weapon, because you can lose him because your opponent can just take the quick score. Now, you're Underworld. You want your opponent to take this quick score, so that's cool. But also, you've got him with a free bribe. So you can just keep him coming back on, and you've got the players here, you've got the strength in depth to be able to run defense for him, which means you get 2 big guys, and one of those is a monstrous big guy. Now what you can do is drop a goblin to take a bribe so that you can keep Creek on for the first drive. You can use his free bribe to keep him on for the second drive, and then you can use the bribe to use him for the third drive. It's not a bad thing to do, you just have to be aware that the bribe can go wrong and maybe Creek gets knocked out. Keeping a ball and chain alive for 3 drives is quite a challenge, I think. Your opponent's probably going to get a good shot, but you can go all in on this roster and you don't really miss out on agility. You've got the goblins to do goblin shenanigans, you've got the gutter runner and the thrower to be a really great scoring team, you've got the roger as well, so you've got Creek running around doing havoc stuff, you've got Rat Ogre just frenzying in a pile of death, and then you've got the blitzer here supported by some semi-blitzers with the line rats to be a really good combat crew as well. This is a super fun roster, and I don't think we see it too often. It is sneaky super. Okay, look at the strength, look at what you get. Compare this to the Morg one. It's a really tight one. Now, 2 rerolls is still quite limiting, and you know, taking that leader reroll is going to get you the third, and that's where you want to be with this team. They've got the core skills, they've got a lot of dodge. You can get away with 2 rerolls without that, but I do like having that third one to just pull off the shenanigans. Anyway, 1100 Creek Rustgouger with a full lineup of Underworld. And the last roster we've got for you today is the Double Trouble roster. So this one comes in at 1095 and features not 1 but 2 star players, 2 of the new star players, the reimagined star players, Fungus the Loon, your friendly neighborhood 80k ball and chain, and Bomber Dribblesnot, who I think is sneaky one of the best star players in the game now because of his value, and he's just a cheap wizard that comes on the pitch. It's outrageous. It's really good. So this roster here is basically the Rat Ogre build, but we've dropped a reroll, dropped a goblin, dropped a snotling, and took a ton of star power. So the Roger with the full complement of Skaven, I don't like to sacrifice any of those Skaven players because they are so good. 3 goblins, 3 snotlings, 2 rerolls, so everything we said about the leader reroll being your third reroll still applies here. Now that gives you 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 players here with those stars. And 2 bribes. And 2 bribes. And 2 bribes? Ooh, that's mighty. Okay, so this is amazing. So you've got the Rat Ogre, the Skaven, then you deploy your 2 goblins as well, a snotling, so you can take on one with swarming. So that's 1, 7, 8, 9, 10 for the snotling, and 11 for one of your star players. And the cool thing here is you've got 2 bribes. Now, at the beginning of the game, if you are kicking the ball away, for defense, probably don't want to use Fungus. Now, we just talked about it with Creek. It can be good. Creek is better than Fungus. Fungus is good, though, for a decent value. But in this situation, what you kind of want to do is bring on Bomber Dribblesnot. Now, worst case scenario, your opponent finds a way to get to him. Okay, you've got a swarming player, it's going to be difficult, but actually what Bomber can do is cause a turnover in the middle. He can just throw the ball at throw the bomb at the ball carrier. The ball carrier, whether they catch it or not, that bomb's going to go off. So basically, Bomber is an absolute turnover machine. You will have to orchestrate it well, but worst case scenario, they still score, and you've got a bribe, and Bomber comes down on defense again. Essentially, how I see it working is that Bomber is your defensive star player, Fungus is your offensive star player. You use Fungus in conjunction with the Rat Ogre and maybe 1 or 2 cheeky snotling or goblin fouls to just take 4 of their players off. just murder them. Just take them off. Great stuff. The bomber is going to be there on defense to turn over the ball as well. I wouldn't run both on the same drive because you will end up splitting your focus, because you want to use players to protect your stars. The great thing about this roster is you've got those Snotlings, you've got those Goblins who you can feed to the Rat Ogre and can use to anchor Fungus, so it's difficult for them to get a multiplayer block on them, and you can kind of screen Bomber nicely, and if Bomber fumbles or the bomb scatters, it doesn't matter if you lose a Goblin or a Snotling. I love this. I think the Creek is just an absolute powerhouse, and this is a really interesting way. Now, Fungus is not as good as Creek, but he's still better than a standard Goblin Fanatic, and Fungus will absolutely distract your opponent. Your opponent's going to go, right, we've got Rat Ogre there, we've got Fungus the Loon there, I need to try and take out Fungus the Loon. They're going to have to use 3, 4, 5 of their players to try and get to Fungus. If they're doing that, then you've got 11 players here on the other side, because you brought one on from swarming, against the remaining 6 of their team. And when some of your 11 players, and that's an entire team's worth, is, you know, a Rat Ogre and a just crew of Skaven Blitzers that you've built, along with a thrower and a gutter runner, they are in trouble. And that's awesome. You've got more numbers, and let's face it, these guys are amazing. The Rat Ogre is amazing. This Skaven team here is amazing, and never underestimate stunty players. Double Trouble roster, super fun, and I think very competitive. When it comes to these rosters, the Hackflem roster is still probably absolutely peak, because you get to do what the team wants to do, you get some support with swarming, you don't have as much as you used to, but you still got an incredible run at winning. The Morg roster is powerful as you like. Creek roster is amazing too, and the Bomber and Fungus one is super fun. Probably slightly less powerful, but still going to dominate a ton of the time. So I love it. These rosters are brilliant. I'm so happy that Underworld are still competitive. I'm also happy that they're a little bit less competitive than they were before, because what that means is that you can take Hackflem, but now you can look at Creek, you can look at Morg, you can look at the Double Trouble roster and think, am I giving up much by running that? Actually, no. You're playing a different way. And then you've got the Double Star version and the Hackflem version and Vanilla version, and that means you, as just an Underworld coach, have got a lot of options to play your game a different way, and that is the best way, because more Blood Bowl is more better. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching. Great suggestion to get this updated. A bunch of you did, so we did it, and it's cool. And now I'm thinking, do I need an Underworld team painted up? Because I haven't painted one up, because I love Skaven, and now I think Underworld are amazing again. Ooh. Anyway, I'm going to go and probably paint things. Thanks very much for watching. We'll be back soon with more Blood Bowl content. Happy blocking. Thanks very much for watching. We really appreciate your support. If you want to help support the channel even further, please like and subscribe, or come join us on our Patreon. We have early access to content, we get loads of feedback from you guys, and we try and do competitions as much as we can. Or you can get yourself some Bonehead podcast merch on our Spreadshirt site. So if you want to support a team, especially for the Bonehead Championship, you can pick up a shirt, a mug, things like that. It all helps support the channel, and we really appreciate it. Anyway, links below. Thank you very much. Happy blocking.